Let's see. We are here to talk about the future, and I know that the title says the future of DevOps, but we are here to claim that basically that the future of DevOps is the future of us. And we are going to give you a glance into this future. So, here it is. So who we are coming from a company called JFrog. We are the providers of 4 different tools that serves your binaries. And we are considered to be one of the vehicles in this DevOps revolution. My name is Shlomi Ben Haim. I'm the co-founder and CEO of JFrog. Together with me, Baruch Sadogursky, the voice of JFrog, our developer advocate.
Thank you, Shlomi. Take a note of this URL right here, jfrog.com/show notes. We prepared show notes for this talk, so the slides are already there. All the links that we are going to talk about are already there. And by tomorrow, we will upload the recording of the session, so all your colleagues that left to lunch will be able to see the recording at least.
It should work somehow. Where should I point it so it will work?
Over there, to the back.
Okay. So who we are to tell the future? I'm going to a lot of conferences. Every time that there is a title from someone claiming that he knows the future, is going to talk about the future, he's basically tagged with a huge question mark above his head because we are not able to tell the future. So who we are to tell the future? We are coming from a company that serves over 4,000 customers and the majority of the Fortune 500. On our binary distribution platform, we see 1.5 billion downloads a month, which is probably the biggest binary hub in the world. And we are part of the open source community for the past 8 years with over 60,000 installations. So at least we are exposed to the demand in the market, and we try to understand what the future brings. But it's not enough. So we did some research, Baruch and myself, and we gathered for you some of the best analysts, researchers about DevOps and what DevOps is. So it's not 2013 anymore. It's not the days of the early adopters of software automation and software acceleration. It's not even the days of the early majority. We are talking about a massive adoption of DevOps in the market today. And if you look at the numbers, you see that more than 80% of the enterprise companies around there are already using DevOps, already implement DevOps in their software lifecycle. And when you ask them why, you get only one answer: speed. We want a faster release. We want to be first. And it's all about speed. And they also speaking about improving the release lifecycle. Why is that, Baruch?
So there are 2 different aspects here which catch the majority of the use cases. One of them is the release speed, and the other is the release quality. And as you can see in today's DevOps pipeline, there are a lot of aspects that take care of automation. All the build automation and all the release automation is about delivering the software faster, and also we see a lot of the cycle taking care of the quality of those releases, all the QA checks, the tests. So here is one of the examples how enterprise architects set up their quality assurance means on top of an artifact repository. And we are going to talk soon about why that's important. Most of the cycle here takes care of those 2 problems that we see the demand for: faster releases, better quality.
And it was great sitting here in the previous panel listening to the VCs on stage, because one of the things that they said, we first look at what is the total addressable market. And according to the same analysts that built this report, the total addressable market of DevOps infrastructure and DevOps tools is $5 billion by 2020. This whole term is about how can we accelerate software releases, it's the speed, and how can we keep the quality. Now, if I will tell you that we can keep a very high quality but release once a year, you will probably going to throw me out from your office. Same thing if I will come and tell you, well, listen, we can release once a year, but it's going to be a bulletproof version. Again, you lose all the competitive advantage that you have in the market. So in order to do that, the software world realized that they have to build some kind of a combination of the developer power and the machine power. And this combo can only happen if you create automation through the release and build process. And in order to create this automation, you have to go down all the way to the binaries. But why binaries, Baruch?
Well, that's for the obvious reason. Very early in the stage of software development, source code is not relevant anymore. The first thing your CI/CD pipeline does is creates the binaries. Everything else from this point all the way to the production is taking the binaries and promote them through quality gates in your different pipelines.
So let's talk about how these binaries and software acceleration actually impact our life. How many of you guys are using iPhone? Raise your hand. Don't be shy. Nice.
I know.
And how many of you guys cross their finger before they press I agree and reboot their machine whenever you do a software update? Yes. And we are talking about Apple. We are not talking about some startup. We are talking about probably the most advanced technology company in the world. So one thing that we learn is users and consumers and your customers, part of their journey is not just about a great device or a great application. Part of their user experience is also software update. And we lost tolerance in our completely hyper-connected world to devices that cannot catch up with the latest software.
But this is our fault. We demand those changes, right? We want better gadgets and better functionality, better things today.
And we spoke about 1.5 billion downloads a month on Bintray, our distribution platform. 80% of it is not even human beings. It's devices and machines that go directly to some hubs, some repositories, and fetch software update. And if you ask your children, they will tell you that the most annoying part of any kind of device or any kind of application is this circling around that's saying that the software is being updated. So we are living in a highly demanded world of a lot of devices that multiple the amount of users, and this is, my friend, is not anymore a $5 billion company. TAM. It's a $50 billion market, according to the analysts. By the way, I'm not coming up with any numbers of myself. But what we told you so far is what you heard so far. This is the present. There is nothing here about the future. This is just teasing you to think about the future and how the future will look like. So let's do a fast forward to the future and what the future brings. So the future brings a huge, massive change. The way that software will be consumed will be translated to ROI. This is how you will be ahead of your competitors, and this is how you are going to provide your customers with a better experience. And this is what we call the continuous update. So it started in somewhere around 2011, 2012, where continuous integration took the world. It was about integrating tools. So it's not just the developer and the waterfall that you remember, it's also about tools in your ecosystem that integrates and accelerates software build and software release. Then continuous deployment, because you have to take it and deploy it somewhere else. And then continuous delivery, because this needs to be delivered as a product. And this is where we are today. The next and the real pain that DevOps is trying to solve is not continuous integration and not deployment and not delivery. These are all milestones in the involvement of DevOps. The real pain is continuous update. And what we claim is software will become liquid. It will become liquid just as our parents thought that it's a miracle to have water flowing in the house, and we are not thinking about it. It will become liquid, just as electricity runs through the wire and you switch it on and there is light and you don't think about the whole process. And still, in today's world, we think about software updates. This, with or without companies like JFrog, this is already happening, and this is where the future is going to.
And from the technical perspective, liquid software is the versions that converge together. Think about faster and faster release cycle. When you release multiple times a day, multiple times an hour, naming the versions or numbering the versions doesn't make sense anymore. You have so much of them, so they converge into a single stream of software, and hence the metaphor of liquid software. There is another metaphor that we need to talk about, and that's the metaphor of supply chain and real-world manufacturing. We are absolutely in love in the metaphor to the real-world manufacturing and how it applies to software delivery. The most important books, for example, the Phoenix Project, one of the most important books about DevOps, actually takes this metaphor to extreme and maps a DevOps process exactly to the Toyota manufacturing systems or other systems alike. We use a lot of terminology that we take from there, like Kanban, like Lean, all that comes from there. And it actually used to work perfectly when we are talking about continuous delivery. Because continuous delivery is exactly about how you take raw materials and build a car out of it to deliver it to your customer. And then it breaks. It breaks because after you got your Toyota, in this example, from the manufacturer, you don't see the Toyota manufacturing again. You drive your car, and next thing you do, and especially, you know, in today's world of containers, you throw your car away to the container. Right, Shlomi? You don't hear from Toyota anymore.
Yeah, but there is only one kind of engagement that this vendor will contact you about the product he delivered during these 20 years, right? This is like callback and recall for changes.
Oh, recall.
Yeah, and if you think about it, recall comes with a very bad reputation, right? You hear about it, you know that every kind of recall costs a lot to the vendor. And what we know is that recall will be part of our past. Recall will not happen in the future because what you ship with the product should also include something that updates the product. And instead of impacting your reputation in a negative way, it will actually generate some revenues because you can actually impact the product that you deliver. And you already see it today in devices like Nest, and you see it in devices like Tesla, right?
Right, so what we actually see in software, and it would be lovely to have it in hardware as well, in cars, is if there is a problem discovered in your device, instead of doing a recall and going back to the service to fix it, it would be fixed on demand by pushing an update. Right, with hardware, it's a little bit challenging. Let's say you have a problem with your brakes, and the car gets automatically updated to have the brakes fixed. That's not going to happen, but with software, it is easy. It is easy to get this car together with a robot that constantly fixes it and updating it. And we see some examples of those happening today, and amusingly enough, it's in the automobile vehicles industry. Think about what Tesla did recently. When they took their cruise control, which we know since the 60s, and converted it overnight with a software update to an autopilot. You got your car upgraded by 20 years of advancement
in your garage
without taking the car to the service. So that's exactly what we want to achieve with software, and of course it is easier with software, but it still comes with a bunch of new challenges. And they may seem very familiar to you, but they are on a completely different scale. So for example, trust. Trust is a challenge that we have in software all the time. But when we do continuous deployment, to our production servers inside our organization, we have to fix or to deal with internal trust. All we need to make sure is that we hire the best people and we trust them with delivering our software to production, and then we end up like Netflix when all the engineers have access to production environments and we solve the problem with trust. When the trust that we need to build is a trust between a company and billions of consumers out there, it's a completely different scale. And to your example, Shlomi, with Apple, even Apple, the most trustable software company in the world, still have this issue because Shlomi won't feel comfortable to upgrade his iPhone, right? Security, it's another aspect. Again, this is not new by any means, but now we're talking about pushing updates through the wires to billions of devices with man-in-the-middle attacks and what's not. How do we fix that? Rollbacks. I'm going to give you a great example of this problem in a minute, but if something went wrong, how do you fix it? Inside your organization, no problem at all. You control the servers, you can do the right thing. When it goes out to billions of devices, what's next? State management. Billions of devices, billion of different possible states that your software is in when you need to push this upgrade. How do you mitigate that? Can you reset the state every time? How do you transfer between an old version to a new version with state management? Network stability. So our network being great, well, not so much, right? And not everywhere across the world. How can we manage devices that some of them are in a completely different software version or software state because they didn't get the latest update because of the network stability? Partial updates. I download the files, I'll update my device, and then the next file just won't come, but my device is already halfway there. There are a lot of problems with that, and being on different states with Liquid software, without well-defined versions that I release every half a year, bring the API and microservices question. My device now, this edge server, have microservices in it. They are upgraded in different procedures, maybe in different pace. How can they integrate with each other well enough? And getting back to the example that I promised you about rollback, that's actually a funny story. So on February 23rd, I was somewhere on a business trip, and my wife called me in the evening and said, you know what, Baruch, I came home and my children are sitting in the dark. And I'm like, what is it? It's a power outage? And she's like, no, it's an internet outage. They ask Alexa, turn the lights on, and nothing happens. And what actually happened is, it wasn't an internet outage. It was a bad software update that came from Google to our Google Wi-Fi routers. What happened is that this update reset the routers, the whole network. And the problem with that, think about it for a second, that there is no way to fix it. Google cannot push another update to fix it because all the routers are already disconnected from the network. So how do they deal with it? They didn't. They send us an email asking to set up the routers again. Another interesting question is, how can we get this email without internet? But for that we have 4G, thank you for that. So as you can see, the future is changing. And the ones who drive this change, the ones who need to answer all those challenges are the DevOps engineers. So DevOps are the developers of change, and here we are going to talk about how this future, the Liquid software, is going to tackle those problems. So we spoke about this convergence of versions, how we make the flow of software so frequent that it looks like it's Liquid. And of course, automation is the key. It comes with the QA challenge, because up until now, we still do manual QA. We can call it in fancy names like explanatory QA and what's not, but it is actually manual QA. Of course, manual labor won't fit into the Liquid software style of development software. So we need insane QA and automotive. Trust, we spoke about that. So how can we be sure that the packages that we get from the companies that we trust? And it goes the same for the security question as well. Audits from third-party companies that will actually make sure that those channels from the company to our devices are secure and we indeed get the package that the company sent, right? Protocols and standards are critical. And that's because when we try to drive this change, which is driven, as Shlomi said, by our customers, speed is of an essence. We need to make those changes fast. The only way we can make those changes fast is buying the infrastructure that does it instead of building it. And no standard infrastructure will emerge until we have those standards and protocols, right? Edges, the devices themselves, become a very sophisticated devices because those devices are in charge of solving the part of the problems that we mentioned, right? So state management, devices need to do it. Mitigation API changes, the devices need to do it. The rollbacks for unsuccessful updates, the devices should manage it. And shadow copy updates are one of the ways that, for example, Google could solve the problem that I spoke earlier by having a copy of whatever was erased and then just reverting back if the automatic tests after the update show an error. And of course, API migration is something that needs to be taken by devices as well, because the APIs need to progress without clear-cut version. How do we switch for one API to another?
Yeah, I was so fascinated listening to you that I forgot that this last bullet is mine. So we are speaking about smart devices, and we are speaking about moving from being the end user to be the consumer. Basically, the end user is a device. It's a machine. It's not us. We are just using it. We are just the consumers. We are talking about the world of IoT, which is a giant umbrella. Every big provider today wants to be an IoT company. All of them understand that the edge points are not just have to be smart, that they have to be ahead of the market, so they will have the competitive advantage. And it's kind of the golden rush happening again 200 years later. So this all IoT stuff, mining for gold, it's happening now here in California. So think about it, it's 1849 and you have $1,000 to invest. And everywhere you go, you hear that there is gold. And there are devices there, there are machines. Just go and dig, you will find it. And going back to what the VC said before, you know that it's a big market. But in the world of DevOps, in the world that enable you to build this future, you are going to build the supply store and invest only $150, not the $1,000. And by the way, just by fact, if you followed history, you know that these are the guys that become rich from the golden rush. And this is what DevOps is. DevOps are the enablers of this change. DevOps are the creator of the continuous update. And DevOps are the creator of Liquid software, which I hope that you will remember this day, because in 5 years from now, it will be obvious. It will be taken for granted that whatever you use is updated.